Hamzat Chimaev dry on your back round one is not easy to get off. Everyone thought, oh yeah, get past round 2 and 3 and then you'll beat him in the later rounds. Before you get to round 2, 3, and 4, you got to get past round 1. He leaves nothing on the table. He just, screw it, I'm going all in.
When someone can carry you over to the boss and then fuck you up.
I kill everyone!
Yeah.
I kill everyone!
Hamzat, at 170, he's the motherfucker, right? But you're not going to do that to Paulo Costa.
I think Hamzat is an incredible fighter, but you're fighting in the top 5 of the UFC. Everybody's incredible fighters. Hamzat is an absolute animal, absolutely. But I mean, you look at the Gilbert Burns fight, which you could have scored either way. You look at the Kamaru Usman fight, and you go,
Chimaev is a very confident wrestler, and even in the striking, he was doing well. I didn't love his entries, but man, when you are just this strong.
Did you see my tweet, man? This must be the most dominant championship performance by any UFC fighter in UFC championship history.
You've been told that fighting is about glory, about skill, about proving who is better on that night. But sometimes, what you witness inside the cage is not a contest. It is an unveiling of power so absolute that it strips away the illusion of competition. You've seen this before, in smaller ways, in your own life. The moment when you realized you weren't in control. The moment when every move you made only tightened the grip of something greater than you. That is what unfolded the night Hams at Chimaev made Dricus Du Plessis helpless. It didn't look like a fight. It looked like suffocation. It looked like a grown man trapped in the body of a child, clawing for air but never finding escape. Every takedown was not just physical. It was a choice forced upon him. Move left, you're caught. Move right, you're smothered. Scramble, and you end up right where he wanted you all along. There was no freedom, only the illusion of it. And isn't that the most terrifying thing? To believe you are choosing when in reality, every choice leads to the same dead end. You know that feeling, when life corners you into decisions that all feel wrong. When you are told you have agency, but every path seems to end in defeat. That's why watching DDP crumble under Hams, its weight felt like more than sport. It was a mirror of what it means to be powerless. A reminder of the helplessness you've tried to bury, the suffocation of systems, of failures, of expectations too heavy to escape, and yet you couldn't look away, because deep down there was a twisted kind of beauty in it. The rhythm of control, the cold patience of someone who never needed to rush. Hams, at chained positions like a poet chaining words, never out of rhythm, never out of breath. He didn't chase chaos, he dissolved it. And in that dissolution, you saw something you didn't expect. You saw that dominance itself can be an art form, not loud, not wild, but precise, relentless, inevitable. Fans wanted violence, but what they got was humiliation. Not a knockout, not a bloody war, but a slow dismantling of another man's will. And you felt it too. That sting of humiliation isn't just for the fighter, it's for anyone who's been crushed by something they couldn't stop. The way a boss reduced you to silence, the way someone walked away and left you powerless, the way life held you down and whispered, "You are not enough." You know that sting, that helplessness that burns deeper than pain. And yet, here's the paradox. In watching DDP suffocate, you were confronted with your own suffocations. The cage became more than an octagon. It became a stage where the truth you've always feared played itself out. That sometimes strength isn't about throwing harder punches, or being faster, or even fighting back. Sometimes strength is about being so immovable, so present, so disciplined, that resistance itself collapses. You resist that thought because it forces you to face the truth. What if you're not the storm, but the one being drowned? What if the role you've been given in this life is not the conqueror, but the conquered? Watching DDP broken down wasn't entertainment, it was a warning. A whisper that the world itself has ways of holding you down until you break, unless you learn to hold steady like Hams. unshakable, unbending, certain of where every move will lead. This wasn't just wrestling. This was philosophy made flesh, domination turned into a sermon, a reminder that the world doesn't reward the wild, but the patient, not the desperate, but the disciplined. And as you sat there watching, whether you loved it or hated it, something inside you shifted. Because deep down you knew this wasn't just a fight. This was a lesson. And now you have a choice. Do you look away, dismiss it as boring, as suffocating, as something that belongs only in the cage? Or do you admit that what you witnessed is also inside you? The helplessness, yes, but also the potential to become the one who suffocates doubt, who chains discipline, who erases resistance with precision. If this spoke to something buried inside you, let it surface. Leave the words, "I refuse to be helpless." Let that be your first act of defiance, your way of breaking the cage life has built around you. They're already calling him the Khabib of Middleweight, and when you hear it, something stirs inside you, because it's not just about one fighter being compared to another, it's about the idea of inevitability. The sense that there are some people who arrive not to compete, but to redefine what a weight class, what a division, what a generation even looks like. You've seen greatness before. You've seen Silva dance, Adesanya strike like a phantom, Du Plessis claw his way to a belt. But in one night, those names, their legacies, sounded like echoes of a past that no longer mattered. What you were watching was not hype. It was conviction. Conviction spoken by men who had stood across from him, who had felt the way his grip doesn't let you breathe, who had drowned in his pace and understood that it wasn't chaos but something far worse, inevitability. It wasn't just domination. It was the feeling of time itself being stolen from you, second by second, as every escape closes into silence. And you, sitting there, could feel it too. Because deep down you've lived it in another form. That feeling of being faced with someone or something that simply does not break. You try to push back and it doesn't move. You try to run and it follows. You try to resist, but your resistance only feeds the weight pressing down. That's what makes Hamzat terrifying. He is not fighting for victory. He is fighting for inevitability. And inevitability is not something you can outstrike or outsprint or outthink. But here's the twist. For years, people dismissed him as a one-dimensional wrestler. They said his hands were crude, his striking unrefined, his gas tank questionable. And then you watched him walk down men like Usman, like Burns, men who themselves carried legacies of iron, and you saw the truth. He wasn't just wrestling anymore. He was breaking wills in every domain, striking when they thought he wouldn't, throwing when they expected him to fade, drowning them in places they thought they were safe. Critics call it poor cardio, as if he slows because he's weak. But insiders know better. They know that it's not weakness. It's the cost of a pace no one else dares to touch. He doesn't fight in bursts. He fights like a storm, crashing endlessly until the walls around his opponent collapse. Imagine sprinting into the ocean, thinking you could outswim the tide, only to realize the waves are endless, and the more you struggle, the faster you sink. That is Hamzat. He doesn't just win fights. He erases resistance. And in that erasure, you are forced to ask yourself something difficult. When was the last time you faced inevitability? When was the last time you looked at your life and realized that running, resisting, denying, it all led to the same place? Perhaps it was heartbreak. Perhaps it was the end of a dream you thought you could salvage. Perhaps it was the moment you realized time itself is undefeated. You tried to fight it, but like Hamzat's grip, it held you down until you could no longer pretend. And yet, here is the unsettling beauty in what you witnessed. Inevitability does not have to be your enemy. Hamzat's rise is not just a warning, it's a mirror. A reminder that when you embody inevitability, when your pace, your will, your discipline becomes something others cannot escape, You no longer chase victory. You become victory. You no longer chase freedom. You become the force that defines it. That's what terrifies his opponents, but that's also what can awaken you. To stop treating inevitability as something to fear, and instead to cultivate it within yourself. To move with such conviction, such certainty, such unrelenting presence, that the world itself bends under your pace. Not because you scream louder, not because you rush blindly, but because, like Hamzat, you never stop. And if this truth unsettles you, let it. Because it means you've found the place where your helplessness meets your potential. The place where fear and power collide. This isn't a warning, it's a takeover. The only question left is whether you will let inevitability crush you, or whether you will become it. If this spoke to something raw inside you, let it out. Write the words, "I become inevitable." Let that be your declaration, your first strike against the helplessness you once carried. Because inevitability is not just his gift, it can be yours. He didn't just walk into an arena and claim a belt. He walked in carrying the weight of forests of exile, of nights where no one was watching and no one was cheering. You imagine the Russian woods, cold, endless, silent. You imagine a young man wrestling ghosts in the frost, isolating himself in training camps where the air itself seemed to punish weakness. That is where Hamzat was forged, not in the lights, not in the glamour, but in solitude. And when the world finally saw him crowned, he didn't hold the UFC belt high like most would. He didn't clutch gold as if it proved something about his worth. No, he carried a black belt, a simple cloth frayed, earned not through contracts but through blood and repetition. That gesture cut deeper than any victory speech, because it told you that for him, this was never about spectacle. It was about respect. It was about honoring the chain of hands that made him, the team that sharpened him, the history that raised him. In a sport addicted to ego, he chose reverence, and that is its own kind of rebellion. But the world never agrees on rebellion, does it? You've seen the split already. Some fans sneer, saying his wrestling makes fights boring. That control is not the same as chaos. That suffocation is not as pretty as blood. Others, though, watch with awe, seeing not boredom but artistry, the quiet, brutal beauty of a weapon no one else can solve. It forces you to confront something uncomfortable. Why do you crave chaos more than control? Why do you demand carnage before you call it greatness? Because deep down, you want to see yourself in the fight. And your life doesn't feel like control, it feels like chaos. It feels like scrambling, failing, reaching, trying to escape. So when you see someone dominate through suffocation, part of you resists it. You call it boring because you're terrified it might be true, that the world doesn't reward chaos, that the world belongs to the ones who hold control. And that's why Hamzat is not just a fighter anymore. He is a phenomenon. He hijacks the narrative. He forces you to pick a side, not just about him, but about yourself. Do you believe that dominance must be violent to be worthy? Or can you accept that mastery might not be loud but quiet? Steady, inevitable, you scroll through the comments and you see the battle unfolding. Rage, admiration, doubt, worship. Some are calling him unstoppable. Others are daring fate, praying for someone, anyone, to break the wall. And you wonder why it matters so much, until you realize it's because greatness always demands a reaction. True greatness does not let you sit neutral. It makes you argue, it makes you defend, it makes you hate or adore, but it does not let you stay asleep. And maybe that's the point. That's why you're here, because Hamzat's story, stripped of the belts and the debates, is a mirror for your own. The woods, the grind, the choice to honor respect over applause. That's not just his message to the world. It's a question posed to you. When your time comes, will you hold up the trophy they expect? Or will you hold up the symbol that defines you, even if no one else understands? The fight world will keep arguing about whether he's unbeatable, whether someone can climb over his wall. But the real question is not about him, it's about you. What do you believe? Do you still think mastery needs to entertain, or are you ready to embrace the truth that real mastery only needs to endure? And if this reached you, let it mark a shift. Declare it. Write the words, "I honor my path." Let that be your belt, your black cloth, your way of stepping out of the noise and into your own inevitability. Because in the end, the fight isn't about Hamzat, it's about you.